more happiness, more appreciation? How am I looking for the fun more, even in these times where things don't feel all that fun to a lot of people and things feel very stressful? How am I actively engaging that lens?
My friends, today we have on an incredible woman. Her name is Risa Williams. She's a licensed therapist and productivity coach. And the reason why she's coming on the show is because she wrote an incredible book, which has so many good tools and strategies you have to read about. It's called The Ultimate Anxiety Toolkit. It is jam packed with real life practices and strategies that you can incorporate into your own life if you have been feeling the pressure of anxiety. And if you have, you are not alone. In this episode, Risa tells us why all of a sudden we've been feeling anxiety. And she introduces us to a concept called delayed anxiety, which I had never even heard of before. Also, one of the strategies she shares with us is her stress ruler and how we can use a stress ruler to help us predict when we might need some extra support. She talks about time management also in this episode and how to share some of these skills with your children and loved ones. I cannot wait for you to take advantage of some of these incredible nuggets. Today is one of those episodes you are going to want to share with a friend. Join me in welcoming Risa Williams. Hello, and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn McCarthy, and today is going to be a spectacular day because we have with us today Risa Williams. She is a licensed therapist and productivity coach and the author of The Ultimate Anxiety Toolkit, which is why I brought her on the show today. Risa, welcome to the Business of Happiness.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
I'm
It's
so
exciting to
honored.
be here.
Oh, it's so exciting to have you here. Let me tell you how desperately we need you right now. The world needs you. So let me first start by honoring you and just saying thank you for everything you do. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for you wrote another book that's coming out in August called The Ultimate Time Management Toolkit, which we also need.
Yeah.
it it feels like those two things, anxiety and time management, go hand in hand.
That's true. And I think a lot of people right now are struggling with both. Ever since the pandemic, the percentage of people feeling anxiety has doubled. And that those are only studies done right after the pandemic hit. So I reckon by now it's even higher in terms of just the general fatigue, burnout, the unknowns of what's happening in the world right now. That's all bound to shoot people's anxiety up.
Mm.
Additionally, one of the issues I hear a lot from clients these days is feeling unmotivated. So that's the time management piece. Feeling unmotivated, feeling burnt out, feeling like they can't get stuff started that they need to finish. I think we've all been through so much in the last 2 years. These things are starting to hit us really hard. How do we navigate this? How do we figure out all the change that's happening that feels so uncomfortable? Because every time something changes on us, it feels uncomfortable. It tends to cause anxiety. And we've had really nonstop change for a while now. And it continues even this week. So
Yeah,
it's
you
been
feel
a
like the
lot to
ground is
manage.
shifting under your feet always. You never have a
Right.
stable spot to stand.
Right. And you figure one way of doing things out, everybody's on Zoom, then suddenly everyone's back in school or everyone's back at the office. It's that feeling like you finally figure things out and then things keep shifting on you. I think that is the general flavor of anxiety I've been feeling from people who come to see me and just people I've been talking to.
So, to all our listeners out there who are hearing, they're not alone.
Yes.
If you're feeling like you are anxious all the time or unstable or feeling like change is happening without your permission, or you feeling unmotivated to get up and take better care of yourself, you're not alone.
It's true. I just want to normalize that everyone is feeling that right now, and everyone's feeling the weight of the pandemic. Even though in the news it's getting better in terms of the pandemic and the numbers dropping, a lot of us are having delayed anxiety from holding it together all this time, right? So all that is normal right now. And it's good that we normalize sort of what we've been through as a thing that requires a lot of mental energy, and that's why so many of us are feeling tired right now and burnt out.
Okay, I've never heard this concept before, Risa. Delayed anxiety. Can you speak to
Mhm.
us a little bit more about that?
So I think sometimes when we're going through stressful times, our cortisol kicks in, our adrenaline kicks in, and we just power through it. And we sort of push the feelings that are brewing underneath it, like anxiety and stress, to the side because we're just trying to get through it. We're in survival mode. When the cortisol starts to drop, what happens is sometimes people's anxiety kicks in because it's been there the whole time. But when they're finally still and quiet and emergencies aren't happening and crises aren't happening, you start to feel the anxiety that's been there in your body. It starts to come out. So what I'm seeing a lot from clients is, well, things are kind of going back to normal. Why am I feeling so anxious? It's possible you've been anxious the whole time. You just haven't had a lot of space to notice what's been going on in your brain and body, for the last year or so.
Wow, that is fascinating. So, how do we, if we're finding ourselves suddenly anxious when
Mhm.
things have calmed down, I think whenever you feel that anxiety building, you start to look for why is this happening? You start looking in your world, and now we start finding people to blame, or jobs to blame, or situations to blame. How do we know if it's something active in our experience or something that's a delayed response because we've just been holding it together with cortisol?
Mhm. So I think one tool in my book that helps is called the stress ruler, which is basically a scale that you learn to rate the level of stress you're feeling. You can use this for other feelings too, like anxiety. And it's basically picture a ruler from 1 to 10. On the 10 end would be like the highest level of stress where you feel like you're freaking out. On the 1 end, it would be where you're very mellow and calm. You feel no anxiety, no stress. What people tend to think is there's only a 1 and a 10, but I tend to view it from the perspective of you're constantly going up and down the scale throughout the day. There are notches in between the 1 and the 10. And that's what we need to get a little bit more sensitive about noticing is, what does an 8 feel like? What does a 9 feel like? Typically, when you get all the way to a 10, it's a lot harder to calm yourself down and kind of investigate where these feelings are coming from and implement strategies to reduce your stress or reduce your anxiety. When you're at a 10, it's kind of too late. But the problem is most of us don't realize we're anxious or stressed out until we're very high on
Mm,
the scale.
mm.
So when I work with people, we write out a map of, what does a 1 feel like in your body and brain? What does a 10 feel like? What do people tell you tend to do from the outside perspective as you're climbing the scale? For instance, does your partner or your roommate or your friends start to notice that you're getting a little touchy, or you're not eating meals as regularly as you should? Are you losing your sense of humor? That happens to a lot of us, right? Suddenly things aren't funny anymore. Are you racing through things, like pushing through with this idea of, if I just get it done, if I just push through, I'll be okay? Because sometimes those are warning signs that you're already pretty high on your scale. And what you need to do is regulate yourself in a more sensitive way and learn that, when I get up to a 7 or 8, I need to take a break. I need to take a deep breath. I need to sit still, listen to music, remove myself from the computer, put the phone down, whatever it takes for you. It's different for everyone to bring their stress down a notch. So ideally, it's about bringing your stress down a notch at a time instead of going from expecting yourself to go from one extreme to the other, like be at a 10 and suddenly be at a 1 and then beat yourself up. Like, why can't I calm down? Why am I not more mellow? Right? There's a lot of little stages in between.
I love that perspective, Risa, because I think you're exactly right. We tend to do that. We either think I'm stressed or I'm not. I'm either
Mhm.
completely relaxed or I'm all in stressed out. But you're right. There's so many degrees in the middle that could give us
Mhm.
those first clues. How have you used this tool for yourself in your own life?
For myself, what I try to do, because I'm a mom of 2, is catch myself, look for the warning signs. So there's a number between 5 and 10 that I call the red zone, and it's different for everyone. But usually people tell me it's like a 7 or 8 on their scale. So when you're at a 7 or 8, you can still catch yourself and bring the stress down more easily. So when I'm rushing around with my kids, or, I'm a professor, I'm a writer, I'm a therapist, I have a lot of things I'm juggling. What I tend to notice about myself is when I get to the red zone, I say things like, okay, if I can just push through, I'll get it done. Or if I can just do all these things, I can take a break. And it's that if I can do this, I will do this. That usually to me is a signal that I'm not in a great place. I need to take a break then rather than wait till I push through 10 more things. And I think any mom or dad out there can really relate to that, because sometimes there is that feeling of, I can just push through, I can multitask, I can get this all done. And that sometimes is the tipping point for, wait a minute, let's slow down a little bit. I'm trying to rush through because I think there's a perceived end, but it just keeps coming, right?
Absolutely. I think we can all relate to that. Absolutely. We can all relate to that. And I think that, even the way we schedule our days and schedule our weeks and months tends to feed to that, to just push through.
Yeah. And we're in a society that encourages constant productivity. And so some of this is not just coming from us internally. We're encouraged by the people around us, the people we're working for, to work. What are you doing? Why aren't you answering emails on Sunday? This kind of thing. And many of you out there listening, especially those in the healthcare profession, you felt this kind of pressure, right? To not take a break. There's always people you need to help. There's always emails you need to answer. So that's part of the time management piece, is that when we're going, trying to be productive, trying to get as much done as possible, we're often overriding our own feelings of anxiety, which are lurking underneath, our own stress, physically and mentally and emotionally. And all that leads you to an emotionally wonky place, as I call it, when all that comes into play. You're pushing through things, you're not listening to your body, you're not taking breaks. Sometimes that equals anxiety at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So how do you suggest, so you're putting together this great book, the Time Management Toolkit. How do you suggest combating that social structure that we have in terms of time management? It's so ingrained in us already, but how can you change it and establish a time management system that works for you?
So one of the tools in my new book, which is out in August, but you should be able to pre-order it soon, I like to look at time through an emotional lens, because I think a lot of productivity books are missing that component. How we emotionally experience time is important, right? So you can have all these productivity techniques like set a timer or stack a certain amount of tasks in a row. It's not taking into consideration that tasks are a different amount of stress to do for each person, right? And it's custom tailored to you. So for instance, you might find going to Target or the grocery store super easy. Somebody else might think, oh my God, that stresses me out so bad to go to Target or the grocery. I have to battle traffic and crowds. And that's a high level stress task for them. Whereas, for me, when I have to do math, it's a high level stress task. For me, it shoots my stress up right away because it's not my best subject. And, I go to a different part of my brain. But if I sit down to write, it's easy for me. Whereas another person, writing might be their math task to them. So I say, look at the tasks you need to do through a lens of stress. And I know that doesn't sound fun, but the tool is called the task intensity meter. How intense is the task for you to do? So you need to get honest with yourself. What things throughout your day are stressing you out? What can you do to order the tasks so you're not putting too many high intensity tasks in a row, and you're giving yourself enough time buffers in between them to bring your stress down? And it changes when you start to look at things through this perspective. It really changes how you view your day and your amount of energy. And it forces you to get more honest with yourself about how much energy things are costing you throughout the day.
That's so great, because I think, when we look at tasks that we don't want to do, we think that we just need to incorporate more into our day to support it. Like, more, I don't know, exercise, or give ourselves more stamina, or get more sleep. And what we tend to do is fill up the day more and more and more and more and more. And that becomes stressful in itself. I love this idea of rating your tasks and seeing what is stressful. So So let's use your example that you gave us and
Mhm.
tell us how to use it practically. So you mentioned going to Target or Trader Joe's. Let me tell you, that is high on my stress level.
I
I
do
think,
workshops where people rate these things. And
yeah.
you'd be surprised how many people say, I going to Target, putting together furniture,
Oh,
going to the grocery store. It'll
not
shoot them
surprised
way
at
up.
all. That
And
is
we
my stress level for sure,
there
and I would much rather sit and do a math problem.
right.
So, how would you and I do that differently? So, let's say we needed to do
Uh-huh.
both in our day. How would that look different for our 2 time models for the day?
So here's where it gets tricky because some people like to do the high stress thing first. They'll
Mm,
say, I have a lot of energy. I wake up in the morning, my energy's great, my brain is focused. Send me to Target first. I'll get it out of the way, it'll be done. And you've maybe heard the term eat the frog. That's sort of the concept there. Do the hard thing first. I wouldn't say there's a one size fits all because I think our brains are very complicated and the way our energy works physically is very different from each other. So another person might say, I want to put it in the middle of the day. I want to ramp up. I want to do some easy tasks. I want to get my brain working. I want to drink coffee. I want to do all the things that make me feel like I can handle going to Target. And I want to do that in the middle of the day. So my book really gets you to custom tailor it for yourself. Where is your energy highest? Where does it feel like a high intensity task works the best for you? Generally, I'd say don't save it for the end of the day because typically most of us, and there are going to be some exceptions to this rule, some people who function better at night who are night owls, right? But most of us, our physical energy is pretty low by the end of the day. And your physical energy is wired to your mental energy. They are connected. Your brain is not like floating on a cloud away from your body. It's definitely wired to what's going on in your body. And a lot of the work I do with people is getting them to get back in their body. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, connect the brain to the body more, bring it back to itself, bring it home. So what is your body feeling like? How does this affect your brain? For instance, you wouldn't want to schedule like a Target trip and putting together IKEA furniture if that's your high stress things. Let's say you have to do both because you just moved in somewhere. You don't want to do those back to back because they're two high stress things. So the more high stress things we put back to back, the chances are it's going to affect us emotionally. It's not going to lead us to a good emotional place. And they've done studies that your brain just gets jammed up. You have trouble making decisions. Something that should have taken 10 minutes is now taking like an hour to do. And you've all been there, right? You've all been wandering the aisles of Target, like, why can't I just remember what I came in here to get? Possibly because when you went into Target, you were already in a really high
depleted.
stress
Mm,
place.
mhm,
Yeah, you were
mhm.
like level 10 on your stress ruler.
If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you didn't get into business to be miserable. The problem is that people feel that if their business gets busier, if they start becoming more successful, that happiness will eventually set in. But it can actually get worse. This is why I created the Business of Happiness Prosperity Coaching. In this one-on-one coaching, we look at how to redefine success on your terms and re-find the joy and the passion in your dream. Visit me at thebizofhappiness.com and become the happiest business owner you know. So what do you do when you show up to Target and you realize you're in that place and you start wandering the aisles and you realize, uh-oh, I missed all those cues. I had the intention to get those cues, but I missed that conversation in my head that told me just push through. And now I'm at 10. What do I do
Yeah.
now?
So now you want to, the easiest way in the moment to bring yourself down a little notch is to take a deep breath in and out and to
Mm,
say as you're breathing in, breathing out, and kind of release it. And do that for, a couple times in a row, and you'll bring yourself down like a tiny little notch. And then what I suggest doing is going really gentle in the way you're talking to yourself. Slow down on purpose. Say nice things to yourself, like soothing things, like you'd say to a tired kid or, someone else that you care about who is struggling. Just start talking to yourself in a nice way. Don't start beating yourself up, which is often what we do in that state, our self-talk becomes very negative and very critical. And you start saying things like, well, oh, I only have a half hour. I'm so slow. Why am I not doing this faster? Why didn't I get this done before? I hate that I procrastinate. And it becomes this like internal monologue that really is harsh. When we're tired, we need to hear more soothing things. We need to tell ourselves gentler things, give ourselves more positive motivation to get through that hard task.
Absolutely. I'm so fascinated, Risa. What brought you to this work?
So I initially started off in performing arts. I was a ballet dancer for many years. And then I went to school for writing, and I wanted to be a writer. And somewhere in the path of trying to be a writer, I started reading a lot of books on psychology, mainly to make my characters better in the books. I was like, I got to make better characters. How do I do this? And then I started going to therapy at some point to deal with some stuff I was going through. I've had a lot of anxiety and different types of anxiety. And I realized that how valuable that was, that space where you can be supported and tell people what you're thinking and kind of figure out what thoughts you're getting stuck on and how to change them. I got really interested in the whole process. So I went back to school to be a therapist. And in navigating that process, somehow found my way back to writing, which is where I'm at now, where I'm writing about psychological things, which honestly, when I started this whole journey, I had no idea I was going to end up here, but I'm enjoying it. I love writing so much. I'm so happy I get to write about things that I've learned and things that inspire me and, share motivational stories from clients who have used tools that have helped them. It just all seems to be fusing together in that way at this point in life right now.
That's so cool. That's so awesome how you were able to incorporate all those passions and bring them back together again into this kind of beautiful amalgamation of your strengths.
Thanks. And I think it's always good when we can do that. It's always good to remember that we're complicated people. Most of us don't just do one thing. We have a lot of different things that we do that make up us. And the more you can express those sides of yourself, the more your own confidence starts to grow, right? And the more tools you gain as well.
So, how can we help other people with anxiety? So, as a mom, you have this understanding of, everything we do influences our kids so intensely. But how can we help loved ones, like our children, with anxiety?
So I think it's good to explain to them that there is a scale, that there are these subtle notches. Because often when kids see their parents being really stressed out, their parents are already at a really high point on the ruler. And it's good to teach them, hey, as you're going throughout your day, you're dealing with all these things. We have this view of kids that their lives are so calm and peaceful, but they have just as much anxiety as us. They have just as much stress. Because if you think about it, new things cause anxiety, and kids are constantly faced with new things every day, every challenge on the playground, every peer interaction, all that feels new. So there is going to be already some anxiety just navigating that experience as a kid. Another important piece is, as you learn to regulate yourself, to tell your kid what you're doing. To say, I'm lying down in bed because I was feeling really stressed out and I need to bring my own stress down. Show them how people regulate instead of just putting a happy face on it and saying, I'm not stressed anymore. But, your kid can feel your stressed out energy still, right? So
Absolutely.
Incorporate them more and let's take some deep breaths together. Let's put on some relaxing music. How can I calm down so that I can teach you how to calm yourself down when you feel this way? I think is a helpful tool.
Yeah, those are great tools. I love your suggestions. And I think that transparency with your children is so critical in terms of modeling that leadership for them.
Kids are picking up on our moods anyway, and they're very intelligent and they're very wired to us. So I think treating them with that respect and showing them that there is a wide range of emotions you experience as adults. And also this feeling like just because you're an adult, you don't have everything figured out is okay to sometimes share so that they can feel confident when they're feeling stressed out, oh, these are just things people go through. It's not like I see a bunch of adults and they all look perfect and they've all somehow mastered it, but I can't figure out how to unstress myself or de-stress myself.
It takes
And then
that
again,
pressure off. Yeah.
yeah. And some of the time management tools work well for kids too, in teaching them, wow, it seems like you're really delaying your math homework. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Is it harder for you to do than your English homework? How should we approach this? Maybe you want to do your math homework first. You want to try that and see if it works, to give them some ways to navigate it a little easier.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. The other thought that came to me when you were talking about teaching kids that there is the scale is, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but it sounds like it would work really well, is just not expecting yourself to jump from 1 to 10 or 10 to 1 in a heartbeat. If you're at level 10 of anxiety, expect yourself or your children or your loved ones to suddenly drop to 0 anxiety with one skill change or with one deep breathing exercise, but giving yourself permission to kind of crawl down that scale.
Yeah, that's so important. It's so important to know that once the cortisol is released in our bodies, it sometimes takes up to 2 or 3 hours to get reabsorbed for us to calm ourselves down. So neurologically, on a biochemical level, expecting someone to just suddenly, lie in a room, listen to a meditation tape and feel great afterwards might be unrealistic. It takes us a while to reset ourselves chemically. So I think when I work with people who are, upset at their partners or frustrated with stuff their kids are going through, it's that idea that we take a long time to regulate. We don't always give people that benefit of the doubt, like they're going to take a long time after they're feeling grumpy to kind of feel normal again. It might take them all night to, after a big tantrum or after your partner's been grumpy from work, to kind of be able to be normal or talk to you in a normal way or not, or want to participate in a group activity.
And giving yourself permission for that as well.
Right. And not taking it on you, that sometimes you have to let other people regulate themselves. And it doesn't have to do with you being a good mom or a good spouse or anything like that. Sort of remove yourself a little bit and see it as a biochemical thing that needs to reset, right? And you can foster an easier path for people, but sometimes you have to let them figure out how to regulate themselves too, and bring their own stress down, because that's a really important coping skills for kids to learn, so that when they're an adult and they're feeling frustrated, they know what to do. They know that over time they will calm down.
Absolutely. Oh, so empowering for sure. Before we leave here today, I want to just make sure that we give my audience access to you. So definitely, please check out the Ultimate Anxiety Toolkit that Risa now has on the shelves. And then coming out soon is the Ultimate Time Management Toolkit. And if people want to find you, Risa, how can they find you online?
You could go to risawilliams.com. That's my website where my books are. You could also go to the ultimatetoolkitbooks.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Risa Williams Therapy, where I'm often posting stuff that will be coming out in my books later. And just, I love Instagram because I play around with a little idea each week of, something I'm planning to write or a tool I'm working with, and people give great feedback there. So if you'd like to get a little taste of the kind of things in my books, start with Instagram or visit my website. You can also read my articles in Breathe magazine, which is a wellness magazine, available worldwide.
Fabulous. Before we got on, Risa, you were asking me how I found you, and you just reminded me, I found you on your awesome content on Instagram.
Oh, wonderful.
So thank you for that. That's a completely free option for our audience, my audience, to be able to find you, and a great opportunity to learn the value of everything you have to give. So thank you for everything that you do on Instagram, and for these incredible books, and for all the contribution that you're making to our society. It's such an important time.
Thank you so much. And thank you for finding me there. I'm so happy that I get to connect with so many therapists and, healthcare practitioners all over the world now. It's such a wonderful time we're living in, that we can all share these resources for free, that people are now seeing going to therapy with less of a stigma, because partially because of what they're seeing on social media and all these little free things wonderful people are sharing. I think it helps people feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, I have these things going on too. Maybe it'll be helpful to talk to people about. I also wanted to add, you don't have to go to therapy right now just when you're in crisis. A lot of people are coming to therapy and coaching because good things are happening, because they want support for positive things they're building in their life, because they want someone to encourage them when they're working towards a goal, or just learn to feel proud of themselves and say nice things about themselves in a safe space. So I think the whole world of therapy is changing a little bit, where we're starting to see it less as like crisis management, although it's still good for that. And it can also be about building these coping skills, structuring your day a little better, learning to bring your stress down.
Yeah. Setting yourself up for success for when you do fall down. Yeah. Cultivating those skills ahead of time when you're
really
feeling good.
Learning how to connect with the success too, because so many of us right now are struggling with that. We've learned how to accomplish things, but we don't know how to emotionally feel the things we're accomplishing. And that's such an important piece of feeling better about yourself, raising your feelings of self-esteem, letting those good emotions in instead of just racing around and sort of pushing them aside a lot of the time.
Oh, absolutely. I think that I might ask you to come back again, Risa, to talk about that, because that's its whole episode. I think a whole episode on its own is just being able to own those good feelings and to welcome those successes when they do show up in your life.
Right. And to give yourself permission to feel it, because so many of us have blocks that we built up that we're not allowed to feel good. We're not allowed to feel proud. We're not allowed to say good things about ourselves. I'd love to come back and talk about that. That's a whole nother thing, right, going on right now with lots of people.
Absolutely. And a big part of happiness, I think that's a big part of being, not just letting go of anxiety and overwhelm, but being able to grab a hold of happiness.
Yeah. And really feel it and really practice it in small doses. So one thing I can leave the listeners with is, you have to practice the feelings you want to feel. This is so important. And so often we're practicing the feelings we don't want to feel. And I get that sounds simple, but in practice, it's a little trickier. How am I cultivating more happiness, more appreciation? How am I looking for the fun more, even in these times where things don't feel all that fun to a lot of people and things feel very stressful? How am I actively engaging that lens where I'm learning to look for those things?
Beautiful. I'm going to quote you on that, Risa. You have to practice the feelings you want to feel. Risa, could you just leave us with, as we complete this interview today, and let me just honor you again and say thank you again. Thank you for joining us and for sharing your insight. And I would love to know, as we sign off here, what is your definition of happiness?
My definition of happiness is, I think, tied very closely to appreciation. So learning to appreciate more of the little things and the little moments that make up our days, instead of looking for these big moments to let yourself feel happy. You can let happiness in a little bit at a time, just by noticing anything you appreciate, whether it's technology or music you're listening to. All that stuff is good for your brain when you're actively looking for it.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Risa.
you.
Thank you for being here
I
today.
appreciate you. Thank you for all you do.
And appreciating all of you listeners as well. Thank you for being present for this episode and for welcoming new perspective and for welcoming Risa Williams to our podcast today. And remember, my friends, when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye-bye.